Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Sharon Bown, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading aircraft woman Monica Verma. We are honoured to acknowledge members of the New Zealand Defence Force Command and Staff College delegation. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that continue to serve, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by students and visitors to the memorial. Students will lay wreaths on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Wyalong Public School. From Victoria, Hayfield Primary School, Hayfield, and Mount Waverley Heights Primary School, Mount Waverley. And from Western Australia, Mundaring Christian College, Mundaring. Please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Boys and girls, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that would help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal Michael Francis Macoboy. Michael Macoboy was born in 1895 to Michael and Mary Macoboy of Bendigo, Victoria. His father worked in the lands department in the Bendigo for many years, but died when Michael was 9 years old. Michael was educated at the Marist Brothers College in Bendigo and proved to be a good student. He went on to study electrical engineering at the Bendigo School of Mines and later also studied at the Working Men's College in Melbourne, now known as RMIT. He was particularly interested in motor cars and in an era when cars were still an uncommon sight, became an expert and fearless driver. Michael Macoboy left his studies at the Working Men's College to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force shortly after the outbreak of war in 1914. He was posted to the 14th Battalion and after a period of training in Australia, left for active service overseas with the 1st Contingent. He proved to be an able soldier and was promoted to Lance Corporal before leaving Australia. He continued training in Egypt, increasingly in preparation for an assault on Turkish forces on the Gallipoli Peninsula. The 14th Battalion sailed from Lemnos Harbour for Anzac Cove at around 9:30 a.m. on the 25th of April 1915. They arrived offshore in the early evening and almost immediately were met with lighters filled with wounded coming alongside. Wounded men were squeezed on board throughout the night, with many of 14th Battalion staying awake to help. The battalion began the process of disembarkation at mid-morning of the next day, landing under fire throughout the day. They bivouacked that night on the beach and the next day began establishing a position around Quinn's and Steele's posts on the heights above the beach. At some point during the 27th of April 1915, Lance Corporal Michael Macoboy was killed in action. No record remains of the manner of his death, but he was buried by the Reverend Andrew Gillison in a brief service conducted under fire. Macoboy was 20 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal Michael Francis Macoboy, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you all for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.